Hey, so today we're going to be making a couple of heart trinket boxes. I started with the idea that I wanted to make a heart trinket box with resin for this photo idea I have that you will see at the end, and I wanted to include some dried flowers. I bought some dried flowers from Wish actually. Those dried flowers that came in a heart box. So I've also been wanting to try out decorating something with a palette knife with silicone, so I thought this was the perfect opportunity for that. So I am going to make a resin trinket box with 2-part epoxy resin, also called AB resin sometimes, and then use this plastic heart trinket box and a palette knife to apply silicone on top of it. So let's get into it. So first I'm pouring water into the mold and then into a measuring cup to see the volume the mold holds, so I know how much resin to mix up. The volume of this mold is the lowest possible level on this measuring cup, so I'm just gonna make double that so I can measure out half and half equal parts of A and B to make sure we mix it right. Also, I figure we'll have a little bit of overspill, a little bit stuck to the side of the measuring cup, so I think it's just safer to mix up extra. Cutting off tiny little pieces of dried flower and actually mixing it straight into the resin. I like bubbles in resin. I think they kind of add a cool effect. I know most people don't, so what I'm actually doing here is letting the resin sit for a bit in the mixing cup to let some of those bubbles rise to the surface, so I do have less of them, or less of a chance of getting like damaging bubbles in the resin. Whereas the bubbles I'm saying I like are the tiny ones just sitting within the resin, not like on the surface. Pouring the resin in the mold, and then adding the larger dried flowers in. Now for the lid, I'm mixing in a tiny little bit of pink mica powder to dye the current resin pink, and then mixing more resin up since I don't quite have enough to finish off the lid. Now we'll set that aside to dry for 24 hours. In the meantime, let's work on the silicone trinket box. So I'm adding just plain white GE silicone to each of these plastic containers and mixing oil paint into them to get the pastel shades I like. Mixing the colors with plastic palette knives. You could use metal, they do come in that too, but as I've said in my last videos using silicone, the silicone will bond to the metal, so definitely safer and cheaper actually to use plastic palette knives. Once mixed up, I am just using the palette knife to literally smear the silicone onto the trinket box. I'm using an X-Acto knife to make score marks in the Trinket box so that the silicone sticks better. To smooth plastic, the silicone will peel off, which can be to your advantage with your tools, but when you're decorating something, you're going to want it to actually stick. I'm going to also set this box aside to dry for 24 hours, and I will check back in with you tomorrow. So since the silicone is now covering the tab that's used to help open the box, I'm going to cut off that tab because I want it to look more heart-shaped. And besides, there's still sort of a tab on the other side where the top and bottom of the box used to be connected that I cut apart to make decorating the box easier, but now I can use that back tab to help open the box. I'll put the links to all of my supplies in the description box below, like always, so if you'd like to follow along with this or just get something cool you see in this video, just click through to the description box and you'll find the links there. Thank you so much for watching. I think these actually turned out really well. I'm super happy with this box. I love how you can see through these petals at the bottom. And then the little tiny flowers I think were a great effect. Using a palette knife with silicone was very messy, but actually effective. I feel like with more practice, maybe I could have more control over it, but I think this turned out pretty well, sort of like a 90s pastel look almost. So I'm pretty happy with it. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you follow along or if you have any questions in a comment below, and I will see you next time.